Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Richie Coughlin. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of July 4th, 2018 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. And we're all going to stand, and we don't have the accompaniment of our singer, Councillor Austin, so we're all going to try and do this together. And we just passed Canada Day, and let's celebrate our country. So together. Please remain standing for a moment of private reflection or private prayer. Please be seated. Can I turn to council? Has anybody got a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Yes, Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor French, 9.2, real estate related, please.
Thank you. It's duly noted. Any other disclosures? Okay, seeing none, we'll carry on. And we have a deputation tonight from Jane Shrestha from the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, taking action on food insecurity and roles for municipalities. So please come forward and introduce yourself. And I know the clerk has your name, and but we do stream these live, so people probably want to know who's presenting tonight. So please just introduce yourself, and it's your show.
Thank you, Your Honor, or Your Worship. My name is Jane Shrestha. I'm a public health nutritionist at the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. And thank you for the opportunity to provide a deputation to Council this evening. First of all, this deputation will include a brief overview of household food insecurity and what it is, its implications for municipalities, what municipalities are already doing that has an influence on household food insecurity, and then some other possibilities for municipalities to consider. First of all, food insecurity is defined as inadequate or insecure access to food due to financial constraints. In short, that means no money for food. And families who, and individuals who are trying to cope with food insecurity go to great lengths to try to do so. That can include things like borrowing money from family and friends, moving into less expensive accommodations, liquidating possessions that they feel they don't really need, even sending children elsewhere for meals in order to free up money for food. That's why we say that household food insecurity is really a more sensitive indicator of material deprivation than income alone. Is it a problem in Simcoe County? Yes, it is, but it's not a very visible problem at all. It affects 1 in 8 households across Simcoe, Muskoka as a whole, and that amounts to about 70,000 people, or the population of Orillia, Collingwood, and Huntsville combined. Why do we care about it? Because it has huge impacts on physical health, on mental health, and on social health for people of all ages, from childhood through adolescence and adulthood as well. And from a social perspective, people who have no money for food they may not have the money to join other friends, people for coffee, or to invite others over for a meal. They may be embarrassed because they can't send their children to school with the type of food that they would like to give them. It not only affects health, but it affects healthcare use and costs, and we know from a fairly recent Ontario study of almost 70,000 households that the more food insecure someone is, the greater their use of a very wide range of health services, including emergency services, inpatient services, mental health services, and so on. And along with that comes an increase in the costs involved, so that for an Ontario resident who isn't worrying about food insecurity at all, their annual health care costs would be about $1,600. But for someone who is experiencing severe food insecurity, those costs would rise to almost $4,000 a year, which is significant. Reducing household food insecurity brings many benefits to individuals, to communities, and to municipalities. That can lead to a reduction in demand on local health services, including emergency services and mental health services. It can help to create more equitable communities, and municipalities are always interested in community well-being. Well, individuals who are food insecure may not feel connected to their communities enough to really participate as fully as they could. And this is significant for municipalities in that when municipalities are looking for community input on policies, programs, and other initiatives, the voices of people who are food insecure may not be represented in community input. Furthermore, when your attention is no longer on where you're going to find the money for the next meal to feed your children or yourself, you can begin to look farther ahead, maybe at personal development and at opportunities that could lead to participation in the job market, skills development, and entrepreneurship. Also, having more money for food means more money circulating in the local community so that local businesses can benefit. The challenge is that it takes more than food to solve food insecurity. Really, poverty is the root cause. But up to the present time, we have community responses to food insecurity have tended to be community-based and food-focused. For example, food banks and other charitable organizations and the communities that support them do very good work to try to address urgent food needs. But food banks only meet the needs of about, or they can only serve about 1 in 4 food insecure individuals. The majority of people who are food insecure do not visit food banks. And when the food is gone, the underlying problem of not having enough money for food is still there. Furthermore, with community food programs such as community gardens and good food box programs, although they do have many benefits to communities, and we don't dispute that in any way, we certainly support them as ways of bringing people together, developing skills, and supporting community cohesion and increasing vegetable and fruit consumption. Because they do not address the underlying issue of not having enough money for food, they really don't have an impact on food insecurity. Municipalities are already involved in a wide range of things that do directly or indirectly result in people having more money in their pockets for food. And there are a number of these on this PowerPoint slide here. Certainly in Springwater, the Township Community Improvement Plan is supporting ways of using existing resources and materials to help meet local needs, and also looking at redevelopment of existing properties and so on, and adapting them in ways that can best serve the community, and promoting the Township of Springwater as a place for people to live and grow and play. So that is certainly one way of helping. We realize that municipalities are the lowest funded level of government, but we would still like to request your consideration for a number of actions that can help to enhance food insecurity. The first would be to consider advocacy to the provincial level for provincial policies that result in more income for food, such as increases in social assistance rates to match the real cost of living that are indexed to inflation. Why? Because right now in Ontario, 2/3 of food insecure people are on social assistance. Support for the continuation of the basic income pilot would be another thing that would be good to advocate for, along with good jobs with regular hours and benefits or policies that lead to that. Why? Because right now in Ontario, about 60% of food insecure people are employed. They are the working poor. 1 job, 2 jobs, maybe even 3 jobs sometimes is not enough to prevent food insecurity. We would also respectfully request that that in addition to the things that you are currently doing that can help put more money in people's pockets for food, that there may be other things that can be done locally that can assist. For example, monitoring poverty in the township on a regular basis, and then taking that information into consideration in planning. Examples of that might be ensuring that lower income areas are well serviced with public transit that is affordable and that links people to areas where there are employment opportunities or opportunities for skills development. Another might be assisting individuals who are prevented from participating in entrepreneurship and training, employment training, due to financial barriers, supporting some kind of mentorship opportunities for them with local businesses, local entrepreneurs, leveling things up, as it were. And finally, we would be more than delighted to work with you or your committees of council or staff to discuss what further opportunities there might be to look at addressing household food insecurity. And so we have included contact information in our PowerPoint presentation. And now I think you have heard enough from me. However, we do have a short video clip from a grade 5 student at Shanty Bay Public School who is interested in the area of food insecurity. And, oops. And thank you.
So, thank you, and for council members, since we do have the presentation on our agenda, we can all individually click on that link in our presentation and hear it on our laptops. I know we had a similar technical challenge at the county
Yes.
when we first viewed it, but no, it's quite an excellent video. So I'll turn to council for any questions or comments for clarification. I guess I have some, the one question that popped out, I think you said kind of 4 of the 8 don't use food banks. Why do you think that is?
We know that, well, why? Well, for one thing, the working poor are underrepresented at food banks, so I'm not sure that we have all the answers, but we would suspect that people who are working are less able to take advantage of emergency food services because of their hours of work and so on. Why there is a difference like that? Well, food banks every year conduct a hunger count, and they keep track of the numbers of people who are able to visit food banks, but we also have information on household food insecurity from Statistics Canada, Canadian Community Health Survey data. And the difference, there are, let's say, 4 times as many people show up as being food insecure, or households show up as being food insecure through the national survey as come from hunger count figures. So we know that there are many people who are not food bank clients.
And so I guess the information you have is about 12%.
That's correct.
And how does that compare to 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or what are the statistics?
Well, we've been collecting information in Canada on household food insecurity now since 2005. And since that time, things have pretty much been flatlined. There has been very little difference. So there have been no changes, no significant improvements in the situation during that time, which tells us that the way we have done things so far, it's not really getting at the root of the problem.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McConkey.
It's funny, I've been thinking about, it comes to a root cause, you also need jobs. And I think you're right in advocating with the province is one thing, because I was thinking, like, we've got a huge development coming, and they take in consideration home-based jobs. And as this council, I think we have to look at how much percentage is the home base allowance at the provincial level, and I think it's quite high. Like, we really do with Springwater, with the development that we have, we can't just look at home-based jobs. We have to look at driving, manufacturers or different types of a job environment, and also on the affordable housing. And thank you for bringing that to our highlight. And we're going through our official plan, and I think that this council and the future council really has to look at affordable housing, because there's not any affordable housing in Springwater.
That's an interesting observation, and maybe this is some research that should be done. Are we creating kind of the working poor because of urban sprawl? Because now people have to buy cars and gas and insurance and take up extra hours in the day. They can't even work the second job to make a reasonable income. I would certainly challenge the kind of the health unit to really look into this, because I really believe, because I observe it for the last 30 or 40 years, people used to kind of work or live in the communities where they work. And we know about 30% of Simcoe County residents leave the county every day for work. I know in Springwater, 90% of non-farm workers leave our township every day for work. Well, and I don't think we can ever pay enough to offset those additional living, commuting costs. And I think there has to be a whole deep-rooted research, because all the provincial policies are very good. They say, we want to build communities where people can work, live, and play, but then we put new 6-lane highways in to take them away from where they're actually working and with the whole concept that, well, housing's a little cheaper, but after you buy new cars every 2 years and pay for gas and that. So I would really encourage you to kind of dig a little deeper with the research. From our perspective, yes, I think we're always conscious that we need kind of to address the housing needs, and hopefully development as they come in, we can incorporate that. But I think there's a really big picture here that, we're always looking for someone else to kind of carry the costs. And unfortunately, we're ultimately the ones that carry the cross, carry that cost because someone mentioned this a few years ago. Unfortunately, there's only one taxpayer. And there's not a whole bunch. We pay taxes everywhere, and we always say, well, the province should do this, or the county should do that, or whatever. Quite honestly, I think we have to get away from that mentality, because we know very well, even if I probably look at the administration costs of the health unit, it's significant. And administration cost doesn't actually deliver services at any level of government. It coordinates it. And so I think there's a lot deeper digging that we all need to do to kind of understand that. I certainly support kind of the concepts, and of course, Don, I've had the opportunity of seeing this before at the local level, but doing things like encouraging entrepreneurship, and I think there's some ideas as we go forward, we'll try and encourage that. But at the same time, we have to have very willing participants to make it all work. And I am curious, 2 years from now, what is really going to happen with our, I'm not sure what's the terminology used for a working wage, what's your term? Yeah,
Is that
living
the
wage.
living wage, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're going to find it's going to have to be $3 higher, because everything else is going to be driven up. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that minimum wage that Ontario's kind of implemented. Is it going to help or hinder the ones at the bottom? And
Yes.
that's my concern. Are we going to drive more people? And something tells me 3 years from now that 12 may become 13 or 14. And it was good intentions, but we need to go beyond good intentions and really assist those that are in need. But anyway, great presentation. Any other final questions of our presenter? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very
Your
much.
Worship and Council.
And can I have a mover and a seconder to accept this delegation? Alan and Richie. That the delegation for the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to previous minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? Coghlan and McConkey. That the minutes of the council items 6.2 through to 6.8 be approved as presented. Any of these we'd like to pull or comment on? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Now we'll move on to minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Alan and Richie. That the minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations, items 610 through to 611 be received as information. Any discussion on either of these? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And now we're into question period. So if anybody in the audience has a question, preferably something on the agenda, but we're open to any questions, and if we cannot answer it for you, we will definitely get back to you with an answer in an appropriate time frame. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Coghlan and Allen. The correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.3 be received as information. Any questions or comments on this? Deputy Mayor Allen?
Yes, Mayor, through you to the Director of Public Works. On 8.3, do you want me to address it now, or do you want to vote on the others?
Yeah, do you want to comment or do you want it pulled?
Pull it to question.
Okay, all right. Actually, no, you can carry on because we're just receiving it anyways.
Okay, Director Coleman, for 8.3, the meeting that's happening, will you be copied on a report in advance of that meeting? And if so, could we, as council, get a copy of the report that staff will be producing in preparation for that meeting?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. I'm unsure if I will, but I will request it, and if available, I'll circulate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Now we move into action items, and the Town of Wasaga Beach connection, Ryland Road to Floss 8. So can I have a mover and a second to get it on the table? Richie and Hannah. The report from the Director of Public Works regarding the requested connection of Ryland Road to Floss Road 8 West be received, and the proposed connection be approved, subject to the conditions listed in the report, or the connection be denied. So open for questions or discussion or amendments. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the question I have is, what benefit would this opening of this road be to the Springwater residents? And what cost would it be for us in the future to maintain it, plow it, and look after it? I guess if I see no benefit to the current residents of Springwater, then possibly if we're going to go forward and agree to this, we need to put some onus on to the people who want this road to help compensate for our costs.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French. And further to that, the indication that we would be responsible for sharing capital costs and maintenance costs, but there was no figures with that. So in order to talk to residents about what it would actually cost us, and then agreeing with Councillor Hannah that there doesn't seem to be a benefit to the residents, and by creating another alternate route rather than people traveling through the main street of Elmville, it's another route for them to go around our downtown. I don't understand why there's this benefit, and if it was simply a request from Wasaga Beach, or if there's something in here that, I mean, there's 5 generational homes on that road that have lived, and I didn't get to speak to all of them, but the idea of this is obviously not susceptible to them, with 2,000 cars potentially coming in that direction every day. I think that to have this connection be approved tonight, there's a lot of information that's just not available to us, and a deferral at the minimum is my opinion.
Maybe Director Coleman, do you have any comments, or maybe also go to CEO Brindley from a planning perspective? In the report, it's a request. I'm not sure if that is doesn't appear to be a condition of the approval of the development, which is kind of interesting because it's got a single road access. But would you have any comment from a planning perspective on a development like this, or you can say no?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'll start off with some things, then I'll ask our Director of Public Works to get more into the costs, because we've had some discussions around maintenance. It is an unusual request from the standpoint of servicing a municipality, one municipality into another municipality, especially if you've been out to that road. It's a very, it's not used extensively. It has not a very wide platform. It serves the needs of the residents, but it's really not designed at all to meet the needs of additional residents. I think looking at the subdivision plan, it was actually at one time, I believe, anticipated that the subdivision would access a different piece of land and therefore have that additional access elsewhere. But it looks like that plan didn't happen, so they're looking for a second avenue of exit from the subdivision to make it safer. I mean, even when we look at subdivisions, we look closely at trying to make sure there's a number of exits just in case there's a fire or an emergency on one road. It doesn't shut down the whole subdivision. You can still access from either way. So, I mean, it's unusual, but at the same time, we look at things from the standpoint of safety. But from a planning standpoint, it really doesn't impact us. The subdivision itself, as I've mentioned before, it was not anticipated that it would access a spring water road. And perhaps maybe I'll hand it over at the moment to the Director of Public Works to talk more about the maintenance and costs. But this wasn't a proposal that we generated amongst the municipality. This is something that the town of Wasaga Beach is having a challenge with in letting the subdivision move forward. And they're looking at spring water as being a potential solution to the problem being an additional access.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor French. And yes, to add to CAO Brenley's comments, in terms of maintenance, right now we're looking at a gravel road, so 49 cars a day. We do send the grader down there more frequently than we would have to send staff down there if it were an asphalt road, if it were a paved road. So in some respects, the maintenance costs would decline somewhat. Capital costs at this point would be zero, as the developer would be responsible for upgrading that road. Capital costs in the future, certainly, 25 years of asphalt life, so at some point, 25 years down the road, we would have to be working with Wasaga Beach to come up with an arrangement possibly for some resurfacing or some sort of capital cost in that respect.
Councillor Coghlan and then Councillor McConkey.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up to that, on page 5 of the appendix, it does say that Wasaga Beach staff explain their intentions to require Elm to make that connection. So from that, I'm inferring that this is a requirement for them to move forward. But with no new tax base generated for that resurfacing that's going to be required, or the infrastructure that we're going to have to repair, we're placing that on existing residents. And as Councillor Hanna pointed out, there's no benefit to the residents of Springwater. So in the agreement at the beginning, it says that, on the first page, it says that Springwater would be sharing the capital costs. So that's different than the developer paying for it all. So I think, again, if we can get some more information on this before we say no.
Councillor McConkey and then Councillor Ritchie.
Maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but you talked about the 49 vehicles in 24 hours, but then it talks about, should the connection be approved, suggests 60 and 200 vehicles per hour. So one thing, have the residents on Floss Road 8 be notified about this? Secondly is traffic calming. When you go from you're living on a country road and you increase it to that amount, that's not why they moved there. And yes, I'd like to help our neighbors, but I just don't believe that the budget implications are where it says no budget implications. I think that we have to look at the budget implications, and we also have to look at the risks or the maintenance or the possibilities with the existing residents. What's it doing to them? And we know from our thing, like if you're going to get these cars, they figure a dirt road is to travel fast. And that's a farming road that's going to have farm equipment on it. So I have problems without the information.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French, and all well, good questions that you're asking there. I drove out there and drove it. And I drove from Vigo Road down to wherever I think Ryland Road's going to come out. But anyways, I drove right to the end and came back. It's a sandy gravel. But my concern is from Vigo Road to County Road 29, which is all gravel. And I think we're letting them off the hook. We just let them do from Vigo Road to Ryland Road. If we're going to accept this, and I have an amendment here, from Ryland Road right up to Vigo Road and right through to County Road 29, because it's a gravel road, like the director said, there's going to be a lot of people on it. There'll be more maintenance, more graders going out there. And if I'm traveling from Elmville, I want to take a paved road. That piece between Vigo Road and County Road 29 is the only piece that's gravel. That will be gravel. And I think, you know what, given just the nature of this, people are going to take concession 8 to County Road 29 to access Barrie or wherever they're going to go. So if we're going to give this to them, they pave at their expense from County Road 29 right back to Ryland Road and everything that needs to be done, the ditching, the everything. And I have an amendment for this. I'd like to read it.
Maybe before you read the amendment, there's a couple of comments that are brought up is, life cycle costs. And I think Director Coleman mentioned it. If it was a gravel road, we can maintain it at a fairly, well, whatever we have to do, grade it now and then, add a bit of gravel to it if there wasn't traffic coming down it. But if it is paved all the way through, and I certainly totally support kind of the concept of getting it to a county road, because they'll figure that one out pretty quickly. They wandered down Vigo a few times, and after that, they'll go straight across concession 8. And of course, the wear and tear on Vigo would be quite extensive. I just wonder, and it was mentioned, and rather than kind of deferring it, I wonder if it should be, before you put your amendment forward, and I'd certainly let you do that, I wonder if it should be kind of referred to staff to kind of do a life cycle cost calculation, because it sounds like even if we approve it, not only do we want them to pay for the capital costs all the way to Crosland, I think we want some understanding that they're going to assist us in the maintenance replacement costs, however that mechanism would work. Anyway, those are my comments. Any other comments for Councillor Ritchie tables is?
Maybe we should defer it then. Right?
Well, I think I'm saying refer, because the life cycle costs, and could we create, are you supportive of that?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Very much.
Seconder, Coghlan? Oh, questions on there? Okay.
We'll just leave the amendment and refer it.
Yeah, no, yeah, because I think there's more we
No,
need
I
even
agree.
before that.
I
Okay,
agree. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot. if we
okay,
don't.
okay. No, I think we need more
There's going to
information.
be a hell of a pile of traffic Monday.
Okay.
Whoops.
Great discussion. I'll just go to CEO Brindley and to Director Coleman. If we simply say, refer to staff for a further cost analysis, do you understand what we're asking for? A life cycle, maintenance agreement, CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, we'll review the recording because there was a lot of good information that council had, good questions that council has, so we'll make sure we cover everything off in the report.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. And also in that note, it's an assumption, but notification to residents within Springwater may not have happened from Wasaga Beach, so that notice to residents affected would be,
Yeah.
thank you.
Actually, that's something I forgot to mention. I think wherever we're going, we need to conduct our own public meeting on this. So please add that to whatever we end up with, because I think it is appropriate. Councillor Ritchie?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor French. Through the director there, when I was back there, I measured it, it's 3.1 kilometers from County Road 29 to Vigo Road, to the intersections of both. And also, if we move south down to Concession 6, actually, we don't have to go very far, again, just to Concession 6, from Vigo Road back to Atkinson Road, and if you swing around, there's already development there. We're seeing lots of traffic on it. It's a gravel road. We're not seeing as much traffic as we will on Concession 8 if this goes through, but that's a good example right there.
Thank you. So we know that, so the motion moved by Ritchie, second by Coghlan, the motion now before council be referred to staff for a further cost analysis and reporting. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one, 9.2, and Councillor Ritchie has declared a conflict in this one, and the drainage agreement, and I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the table. Alan Hanna? The report from the planning technician regarding the drainage agreement acceptance, W. Van Larvenhoven, dated July 4th, 2018, be received, and the terms of the agreement as provided by the affected parties to the severance with respect to the split and drainage apportionment under Section 65 of the Drainage Act be accepted. Any questions on this of the director? I think it's somewhat straightforward since I understand there is agreement amongst the parties. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 9.3, award of relocation fuel lines and tank replacement. Can I have a mover and a second to get this on the table? McConkey and Hannah. That the report from the Director of Public Works regarding the relocation of fuel lines and tank replacement at the Del Tren Pump House dated July 4th, 2018 be received. That Comco Canada Limited be awarded the relocation of fuel lines and tank replacement at the Del Tren Pump House in the amount of $15,845 plus HST. Any questions on this? I guess my question, how big is this tank again? It's $15,000, a lot of money. Director
Thank you,
Coleman.
Mayor French. The tank it includes a new tank and new lines as well. The lines currently run over the water reservoir, which is a no-no, so it'll be the relocation of the lines as well.
But how large of a fuel tank would this be? I'm just curious.
I will have to look that one up and get back to you.
Councillor McConkey.
Is there any type of like insurance policy if there's a risk if something happens, like because it is near the drinking water and something happens where the fuel spills? Like I know they're doing their job and you hope it's safe, but if there isn't, if we got some type of an agreement?
Director Coleman or CAO Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor French. I guess there wouldn't be an insurance policy per se, but what we're doing by relocating everything is getting it out of the source water location to prevent a catastrophe from occurring, I guess, and leaking into the source water.
Follow up?
I understand that, so when a move takes place, something can go wrong in a move. And so since it's near the source water, we're moving it, but something can always go wrong. People here have had probably stuff done at their home and the person doesn't do it right. So I just want, there's some type of reassurance that if the move goes wrong, they're accountable.
Thank you, Mayor French. Sorry, I misunderstood that. Yeah, the contractor will be provided, or be required to provide insurance and named us as an additional insured, so that should something go wrong, that they would be the contractor, they would be the company responsible for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. And 9.4, a fuel system upgrades. Can I have a mover and a second to get this on the table? Coughlin and Hannah. The report from Operations Coordinator PW-12-2018, Fuel Systems Upgrade Yard 2, dated July 4th, 2018, be received. The tender PW-12-2018 for Fuel System Upgrades Yard 2 be awarded to Comco Canada Limited for $103,371, excluding HST, that the additional funds required in the amount of $5,190 be transferred from the Public Works Reserve. Questions on this? Councillor McConkey.
Just have concerns with the last, like, yes, they had the lowest bid, but they're recommending that the tank volume monitoring system at this time and to continue to do the manual volume reads. So it sounds like they're not, like right now we have a monitoring system. Am I incorrect? And then now it says, but they'll continue to do a manual, and the monitoring system can be added when the upgrades happen. So are we going from monitoring it now to a manual system?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Councillor McConkey. We currently do not have a monitoring system. We currently dip the tank every day, record the volumes, and then balance it at the end of the month. So the new tanks and the new system will continue this way until we install the, subject to council approval, install new tanks next year in Yard 1. And at that point, the monitoring system will be implemented across both tanks. So right now, it's the same, yeah.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. Part of the argument for doing this is that the tanks, I understand, are 35 years old. My question is there any evidence that there's any leaking in the tanks, one, and two, what is the normal life cycle you would expect from these tanks?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Councillor Hannah. The current tanks we have inspected every year, and they're tested to make sure they're not leaking. So at this point, there is no evidence that there is leaking. From what I understand, I'm certainly not a tank expert, but from what I understand, these are well beyond their reasonable life cycle. If you recall, we went out to tender several months ago, replacing just the pumps and adding a monitoring system. There were no companies that would bid because our tanks were so old, so their recommendation was to get rid of them.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Nine point 5, Albert Street reconstruction. Can I have a mover and second to get this on the table? Allen and Coghlan. The report from the Director of Public Works regarding Albert Street reconstruction Phase 1, dated July 4th, 2018, be received, that Penn North Group Limited be awarded the contract for the reconstruction of Albert Street East in the amount of $1,689,415.79, including HST, that additional funds in the amount of $90,151.25 be drawn from the Gas Tax Reserve Fund, that the necessary documents be executed by the mayor and clerk. Questions on this construction? Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to Director Coleman. We received a plan of subdivision for the property behind Albert Street, which included some redesign to the school that was there. And in this, it says that the sidewalks are going to be redone. Is this something we're going to be redoing again, or is it being done to the potential for the school to be reconfigured to the north end?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Coghlan. Phase 1 of this project does not include the area in front of the school. It's all east of the school. Having said that, I think ultimately, and I know Director Spagno was in discussion with the school board about the reconfiguration there. I still believe that ultimately we will need sidewalks on Albert Street so that the kids can walk to school. So I don't think that there be anything that we wouldn't use or that would have to be torn up.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Nine point 6, the report, Administration Center lower level space construction. And I can have a mover and a second to put this on the table. Allen and Coghlan. The report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Properties regarding Administrative Center lower level construction dated July 4, 2018 be received, that SRM Architects be awarded the contract to commence Phase 2 of the Administration Center lower level space accommodation, and that Council authorizes proceeding with the construction of the Administrative Center lower level space in 2018, that the additional funds required to complete the project of $219,000 be funded from the Administration Capital Reserve. Questions? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. When we go ahead and do this, which is much needed, what's the access to get down there besides the stairs? Like what about accessibility for older? Pardon? That's on this side. So they're going to be able to use it too. All right. Thank you.
Sorry, actually, we did, he asked the question on the microphone, we should answer it. The accessibility of the elevator is to be shared by anyone. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. I count 9 office in an open area. Is that what this extra space would provide? And has there been any contemplation of initially renting out a portion of this until we have full need of the extra space?
Director Belcour?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just doing a quick count. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Deputy Mayor, there would be an additional 8 workspaces plus an additional 3 office areas for a total of 11 workstations, plus a small meeting table and 2 storage areas located in the lower level. And no, there's not been any discussion regarding possible leasing of or renting of space until such time it's fully staffed out.
I guess it's a good question, but would this building be really designed for accessing as a third party? CEO Brindley, you guys comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also related to the question from the Deputy Mayor. It's something we could look at. The challenge is from an access standpoint. Anyone downstairs, there really isn't a place for them to bring clients in, and that's a challenge. Like, we could look at, there are some related government offices around here that might need space, and it's more of like, well, you call it hoteling or something, that they could have workspace, and we can look at that. It hasn't been considered at this time, but it's hard to bring, say, an outside company in because we don't have the same accessibility, because they don't have a front counter, they don't have a front presence that we can give them.
Other questions? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor French. I spoke with staff because I thought $300,000 to do the interior work on an established building seemed kind of high to me, and I was sort of convinced that there's justifiable. Maybe Mr. Belcourt could explain how that $300,000 is justifiable. My second question is that because this is growth related, is there no opportunities for try to get some funding for this through development charges? I see the Director of Finance shaking his head already because he knows where I'm going with the question, so I'm sure he's probably caught the answer.
Actually, maybe I'll go to Director Schmidt first. You know, DC's relative to administration, maybe you can give us the policy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. So, in some cases, this could be growth related. It depends on the staff that would be occupying the space. And based on our preliminary discussions about the staff that would be occupying the space, it wouldn't be DC eligible. Those services, if you will, are not typically supported by development charges. So I would say in this case, we might have a bit of an uphill battle if we tried to do that. So.
Any other questions? Councillor Coghlan?
Just as a follow-up on that, can you elaborate on the staff that would be using this space, if not because of development or growth?
Dr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Coghlan. Again, preliminary talks have been, I believe our IT department would be essentially relocated to this area. Building services, I believe, would be relocated to this area, as well as I believe there's been some talk of bylaw enforcement. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
CEO Brindley wants to comment?
Just to clarify, the purpose is to have the employees occupy the bottom building, or the employees that primarily work outside. So they don't need essentially to have a top presence in the building, because we want to work on better customer service and the layout at the top of the here to be more streamlined and bring clerks up front and do some renovations over the next year and actually start having a better customer service experience with all our different divisions. And the ones downstairs will be primarily those people who are doing exterior inspections, those people who work outside. So there will be still a building presence upstairs, but example, the building inspectors will be downstairs.
continue. Councillor Coghlan?
And thank you. Well, that makes sense. The reason we're expanding is because we're growing. So to me, regardless of who's going downstairs or who's staying upstairs, this is because of growth. This is because customer service needs to expand, like you said. So I'm just curious as to what portion of this, I'm not suggesting all of it, but if we're going to take it out of the tax stabilization, or sorry, out of the reserve for this, I'm just curious as to me, anything that we've done previously, if there was a growth component involved, there was a portion DC eligible.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Coghlan. So through the Development Charges Act, typically administration centers like town halls are not DC eligible. So you may recall some of the discussion we had with Mr. Scanlon from Watson and Associates indicating that when this building was built, there would have been no DCs applicable to this office. It is an administration office, which aren't typically DC eligible. However, on that point, he did indicate too that depending on some of the staff that are within the facility, a portion could be DC eligible, but again, based on the individuals that we're suggesting would be allocating this space, it's not likely that there would be DCs eligible. So.
Maybe just further clarification, because, you know, we're spending money and doesn't appear that the capital costs are, but I guess some of our revenues do come back when we expand. We have more building, inspectors, but the building and planning department are self-sufficient. Is that the concept, Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. So building services is essentially treated that way. They're kind of their own separate entity, if you will, although we don't treat them that way, but financially they're somewhat treated that way in that they're full cost recovery, or required to be full cost recovery. Planning services is not necessarily that structured that same way. Planning services is not 100% cost recoverable. So.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Just on that, when you recover costs, do you impute a rent charge to them as part of that cost?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Allen, yes, we do charge building services a cost to rent space here, if you will. So.
Actually, that's a very good point. So I guess for further clarity on that, so part of that rent would be amortization of the capital costs would be factored into that rent? Okay, good. It's good to see the building department pay for itself. Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship. Back to Councillor Hanna's original question. So the projected cost for this renovation, we budgeted in the 6-year capital plan $300,000 in 2019. Based on the Class C costing, we asked them to look at an option A and an option B. The option being to have what they call ceiling clouds. It would be an architectural feature to take away the look of the ductwork and all the wiring and stuff that's exposed in the ceiling now. But after reviewing the cost of that, staff are recommending that be eliminated, which would result in a net reduction of $35,000 in the estimate A for the project. So with the construction cost would then be $167,000 just for the straight construction, another $18,000 for the consultant fees, which are already established through the RFP that was done in February. Furnishings, we have an estimate of $22,000 to outfit based on the design, for a total cost of $207,000. We've included a $25,000 contingency just in case the Class C estimate is off one way or another, for a total project cost of $232,000. You'll recall this year we had $35,000 budgeted for the lower level accommodation design, of which we've only spent just over $17,000. So we have $17,000 still available to us this year. So you might, with that reduction, we require $215,000 plus the non-recoverable HST, So where we come up with the required 219,000 is the additional revenues or funds required to be able to proceed in 2018.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. I'm in favor of this. I think with the growth that we're going to have, we need to have it. I think we need to have proper offices for the people that are sitting at desks in the middle of who knows what down there presently. And we have to remember this is going to add value to the building for whatever eventuality happens with this building.
The only commitment I'd like to have from our CAO is we don't undertake the concept, build it, and they will come. So do we have a kind of a promise that we're not going to fill the space until we're needed and is included in future budgets?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ultimately, council approves new positions, so I just can't do that, and that's not the intent. The intent actually is just to look at a longer-term horizon. When this building designed, we didn't even know really to the extent of growth of not just Centre of Espera, but also what's happening in Midhurst. There will actually be some relief on this building in the long term once the new community center is built, the arena, because recreation staff would then move to that facility, therefore freeing up staff here. So in the long term, this addition probably will do us for quite a few years. So I don't expect, and I will not fill it up just because we're building it, sir.
No, I appreciate that, and I think, it is appropriate that we do think long-term instead of short-term, because catch-up always costs more money. Any other questions? Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to CEO Brindley. Just judging by the heads that are nodding, obviously this plan was circulated through staff and it works for everybody and it's something that's desired by current staff.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through to Councillor Coghlan. Yes, we originally there was about 5 or 6 concepts, and we actually sat down with the senior management team to look at not only the needs of the entire municipality, but obviously having a bit more focus on those departments that may be deployed down to that space. So when we looked at the layouts, they really are catered to what the team felt the need was in the long term.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, next 9.7, tree nursery sports park fencing. Can I have a mover and second to get this on the table? Alan and Hannah. The report from the Recreation Parks and Property Supervisor regarding tree nursery sports park fencing dated July 4th, 2018 be received. That the quote from Pat Lalone Fencing in the amount of $77,306.66 plus HST be approved. That the funds in the amount of $77,306.66 plus non-refundable HST be allocated from the tax rate stabilization reserve. Questions? Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the CAO Brindley. What would be your estimation of costs that we have spent, salary included, and other costs to repair the damage for however many times this has been torn up over the last few years?
CEO Brindley and maybe Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the Deputy Mayor, I'll actually refer this to Mr. Belcourt because he would have a better idea.
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Deputy Mayor. I honestly cannot put a number on it at this point. There have been numerous incidents where we've had to deploy staff on overtime to accommodate events, whether it be something that's happened on a Friday evening, we've had to bring them in overnight, first thing in the morning. So the costs do add up considerably. Typically, if we've had a couple of fields where they've gone out and done donuts, where they've only dug up maybe an inch or two, it would take a good 2 staff, 5 to 6 hours in time, plus use of materials from on-site, plus reseeding, to try and reestablish and try to get the grass knitted back in to create a playable surface. One incident this past year, the car dug in so deep it was in about almost a foot, and we're surprised the vehicle didn't overturn. It was in that deep and that sharp.
Follow up?
Just to follow up then, so this recommendation to put the fencing all around would definitely prevent any vehicles from getting into that area once it was closed?
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Deputy Mayor. It would certainly be a deterrent. I would never say never, based on some of the other gates and stuff and barriers that we've seen removed by big trucks, et cetera. But it would certainly deter the vehicles, the small vehicles that come out and are looking for some weekend fun or evening fun.
Follow up?
And what is the status of us putting cameras in that? And if we don't have any now, which I don't believe we do, what's the cost of those in our estimation?
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the Deputy Mayor. Actually, cameras now at the admin center have been deployed. We have one more to do. There's approximately, is there around 10 cameras now? I'm trying to do a mental count. That was paid for with an existing budget in terms of our facility upgrade budget. I can get you a figure, I just don't have it at my fingertips, but there are cameras not only at the front of this building, at all fields, and so those cameras are in place right now.
So the plan would be to have the fence around plus have videoing of any activity? Both?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I support this, obviously. My clarification I would like to have is that the 77,000 is for option 2, which is the entire project for all the field, correct?
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hanna. Yes, it would be enclosing all of the fields.
Thank you. Because that's not in the recommendation, I want to make sure we were doing the right one, so thank you.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Director Belcourt, the report speaks to the soccer fields specifically, and then later in the report it says sports fields. So is there going to be a preventative for the baseball diamonds as well?
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Coghlan. Yes, as part of the 2 additional ball diamond design, we will put barriers so people cannot drive around them. The ball diamonds themselves right now are enclosed, which prevents them from getting in. But to prevent them from being able to drive around the perimeter, we will be putting barriers across the open areas to prevent that.
Councillor McConkey?
This is, has to be done, and it's sad that it has to be done. I'd like to see something go in the Springwater Link advising people that the taxpayers are paying for this because people are being foolish out there on ATVs and the road bikes, and I don't know if we should be passing a bylaw that, now that we've got the cameras, we can catch them and we can find them. And I don't know if we ourselves can find them, but I think these people need to pay, and if they do it again, they got to pay strongly.
Any comment from CEO Brindley or Director Belcourt? Because I assume if we do catch them, we can charge them in at the present time. And what would they be charged with? CEO Brindley, what would they be charged with?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure the exact charge, probably obviously trespass at first, but depending on the damage, it could be criminal trespass. I'm not a police officer, so I'm sorry, I don't know.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Through you, Mayor French. So assuming these do get put in, then we would have to have staffing to clear the area and lock them up each night and then reopen them at specified times. So there'd be a staffing component in addition to this cost, right?
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Allen. The large access ports, which would be the gates for the equipment to get in, which would be large enough for a vehicle, would be locked all the time except for when we're doing maintenance. For the users of the facility, they would have pedestrian gates whereby a vehicle would not be able to get in, like a dirt bike might be able to squeeze in. But it's not just them, it's cars and trucks that are doing the damage. The dirt bikes come in and run through, but we haven't seen them as much as cars and trucks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes,
Through
Councilor
the
Ritchie.
director there, Ron, what about emergency vehicles? If there's somebody hurt on the field, is there access for them to get out there and get that? I'm sure that's been looked at, but I'm just mentioning it.
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Ritchie. We use a standard lock on all our gates and facilities, of which the fire department has keys for them, so they're able to access them. And if they don't open, they've got one large key that opens everything.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Nine point eight, Midhurst Union Cemetery Revitalization Project. Mover and a seconder, Hannah and Coghlan. That the report from the Deputy Clerk regarding the Midhurst Union Cemetery Revitalization Project dated July 4th, 2018 be received. That Council approve the Midhurst Union Cemetery Priority Development Master Plans provided by Hilton Landmarks dated June 25th, 2018, and attached as Schedule A to this report. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. 9.9, purchase of land abutting 1224 Sunnydale Road. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor McConkey and Coghlan. The report from the clerk regarding request for purchase of land property abutting 1224 Sunnydale Road dated July 4th, 2018 be received. The council hereby approve the request for purchase of approximately 20 feet by 50 feet of land abutting 1224 Sunnydale Road at the current market value, plus all applicable fees, taxes pending completion of the requirements under bylaw 2009-032, a bylaw to govern the sale of land by the Township of Springwater. The staff be directed to commence the process required to finalize the sale, or the council hereby deny the request for purchase of approximately 20 feet by 50 feet of land abutting 1224 Sunnydale Road. Questions? I know it's fairly straightforward and squaring off a lot. Councillor McConkey first.
If we do proceed with this, can the money raised from it go back into park in that area?
Director Belcourt or Director Schmidt? Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if council has a desire for the funds to be allocated to a specific, or for a specific purpose, then that might be something that council might want to consider in the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Coghlan?
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason why the lot was created in that configuration in the first place?
Director Belcourt, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Coghlan. I don't know.
Councillor McConkey?
So since it was abutting onto the Stonegate Park, and Stonegate Park really hasn't had a lot of upgrades lately, I was just wondering if council here would agree that this funding would go to Stonegate Park. Because we're taking a piece away from it, but we can put something back good into it.
Well, I could suggest that if we're approving it and you want to propose an amendment, I'm sure we could work that out. Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to Director of Finance. The funds that are being received would go into outdoor recreation or open space and then be allocated to any need throughout the municipality. You know, right now through recreation, we look at each component of community and their needs and upgrades to their playgrounds. And as communities grow, I know we just had the request for basketball nets at a smaller subdivision where the children have grown up and they've outgrown the play sets are there. So right now we have a large fund that we use to make sure that we have access to upgrade or provide amenities to each subdivision as upon their request.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Coghlan. So this is the sale of property, if you will. So in this particular case, it could go to, as Councillor McConkey mentioned, it could go to a specific fund for that specific park. And or you may recall through our 2017 financial statements and year-end surplus, we did create a land acquisition reserve whereby when we sell land, funds could go into that land acquisition reserve as well. So if there's no specific recommendation by council or direction by council as to where the funds ought to go, likely the default would be that land acquisition reserve so that we could use those funds in the future to, if we wanted to acquire property.
So, Councillor McConkey, would you like to propose an amendment?
Yeah,
and see
because
where that goes?
it doesn't say how much it is, and I can't see it being a lot of money for that piece of land for 20 by 50. So I would like to propose an amendment since I'm the owner of the motion. That the sale of the property from the Stonegate Park go back towards the needs of the Stonegate people within the park. To the Stonegate Park, there is a Stonegate Park.
Okay, Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and I guess the first one can be answered in open, the second one maybe require us to resolve into close, but my question would be, the open space that this is being taken away from, is this the community park, or is this open space? And if so, my second part was, without knowing how much this is, I don't think that there's gonna be enough money to utilize, like, this is a giant open space, and to utilize this as a community park would
Well,
require,
it's not going to be a community park.
that would require more than in what I'm assuming to be. So if this is, we're looking to upgrade to the community park, I would need to know how much we're looking at.
Maybe I'll go to Councillor McConkey as a kind of holder of the motion. I think the intent is that any proceeds be used for any improvements.
In the Stonegate
In the
Park.
Stonegate Park, yeah.
There is a Stonegate Park that's
Yes.
being used, yeah.
Okay, just for clarification, and the seconder can decide if she still supports it, that this report from the clerk regarding request for purchase of land property abutting 1224 Sunnydale Road dated July 4th, 2018 be received. Council hereby approve the request for purchase of approximately 20 feet by 50 feet of land abutting 1224 Sunnydale Road at the current market value plus all applicable fees, taxes, pending the completion of the requirements under Bylaw 2009-032, a bylaw to govern the sale of land by the Township of Springwater, and that proceeds of the sale be allocated towards future upgrades at Stonegate Park, and that staff be directed to commence the process required to finalize the sale. Are you still supporting the seconder? Councillor Coghlan?
And thank you, and through you, Mayor French. Are there other parks within that community too, or is it specifically that one?
No, the other ones would be Stonewood Manor.
And you don't want it to go to all of them? It would only
I
be...
guess it would be nice to know the amount.
Well, and I'm also curious, the park at Stonegate may not require upgrades for accessibility or the play mat, and there might be other ones in that same neighborhood that do, so by including the name of this park in that motion, it would prevent us from being able to spend that money if there's 3 parks in this community, depending on which one needs the upgrade at the time.
C.O. Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. First, before I go into my second comment, I'll ask the Mr. Belcourt to comment on, is this the only park within Stonegate?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship. In that area, Stonegate Park is the only park in there until future developments occur around it, so it's the only one at this time.
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to add to that, if council may remember, is that through the Stone Manor subdivision, the developer has an additional fund of $100,000 that's going to those parks. So I think those parks are well taken care of. In this case, we should apply that specifically just to Stonegate Park.
Okay, are you fine seconding that, Councillor Coghlan? Okay, I think it's clear. All those in favor? Carried. And 9.10, the kind of the monitoring wells, the NVCA. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Hannah Coghlan. The report from the clerk regarding landowner agreement Ontario Geological Survey monitoring wells dated July 4, 2018 be received, and the council hereby authorizes the mayor and clerk to enter into a landowner agreement with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority for the groundwater monitoring wells identified as well ID A222287 Glengarry Landing and A225894 Holler Road located on Township of Springwater property. Any questions on this? I think this is what, simply formalizing what's in place? Is that correct? Is that my understanding? I guess I'll refer to the clerk for that. Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. These wells have been in existence and in place since 2014, so it is just to formalize the process.
Councillor McConkey.
The only concern I had is I know that the Holler Road, there's a lot of farming going on in the area, and I didn't know with the groundwater monitoring wells, you know how we talk about source water protection and the closeness to farming and that, whether there's any impact because of this or, you know, like in the future or anything. Like, I don't want any limitations to the farming because of this taking place.
I'm not sure if anybody can comment, but my understanding is, since it is a monitoring well, there's actually no water in that necessarily kind of being pumped from. It's really to kind of check levels and the quality of water and those type of things. And I know there's a significant number of them around the region, but maybe we can get that clarified for you, Councillor McConkey. Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. And 911 Enbridge Gas Distribution Franchise Agreement. Can I have a mover and a seconder on this? Richie? Hannah? That the report from the clerk regarding Enbridge Gas Distribution Franchise Agreement dated July 4th, 2018 be received. That a bylaw authorizing the franchise agreement with Enbridge Gas Distribution, Inc. be forwarded to council for consideration. Questions, and the CEO would be quite happy to address them. Councillor McConkey.
So is Enbridge the only one who can provide gas? Because like when we get into other providers of things like communications and that, we don't go into, so is it single source?
Yeah, I think the problem is here, they own the gas lines, I guess, whether it be other providers. CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor McConkey. This is just an agreement for them to use our trenches, or essentially our right-of-ways. If another utility provider wanted a similar agreement, we would enter into an agreement with them. Essentially, they essentially own all the gas in this area. But we would, if another person came in with another similar agreement, we would, like a similar situation, we would work with them as well. Just like, example, we have Rogers, Bell. It's just, this is more of an agreement to use our services and how we define those rules.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to information reports. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Alan? Coughlin? I think we're running out of gas here. That the report, Freudian slip, that the report items 10.2 through to 10.11 be received as information. Any of these we'd like to pull and discuss. Councillor Hannah.
I have questions on 10.5, please.
Okay. Any other? Councillor McConkey.
10-9.
Anything else? Okay. Yeah, first of all, are there questions and comments, or should we pull it? Okay, I'll start with Councillor Hannah, see how it goes.
Thank you. My question's on 10.5, if I'm sure everybody's read it. Unfortunately, the people at home won't be aware of this, but this is our grass cutter and snow sidewalk plows, so on. I think Perry and Sandy remember back in 2011 when we bought this, I think we paid around $150,000 for it, or maybe it was $100,000 with $50,000 worth of equipment. If you read it now, it needs repairing. We can repair it and keep it for maybe another year or two, whatever we get out of it. If we trade it in, I think it was $157,000 they want for a new one. Plus, they'll give us $10,000 for the one they're going to charge us. I think it's $27,000 or $37,000 to repair, to do the complete repairs. So my question is, I want to make sure that if we approve this here tonight, we're not committing to purchasing another one of these same machines from the same company that doesn't seem to have stood up, in my view, reading the report, that great, and it costs us a lot of money to repair it, and they're going to give us $10,000 after we spend thousands of dollars on repairs if we trade it in. So, again, my question is this just for our information and to clarify we're not making a commitment going forward that we're going to replace the machine that we may not repair, we may repair and keep with a machine from the same company?
I'll go to Director Belcourt. I think the one clarification is that the 10,000 is an as-is unrepaired condition. In other words, buying it for scrap. But Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hannah. This is an information report. It's not approving anything. It's to provide council with an update what has occurred already. These repairs have been incurred. It was right during the height of the snow season. We were between a rock and a hard place, and we needed the machine, and we needed it as quick as possible. So those repairs have been incurred already. What we're doing is we're advising that we will be making a request in the 2019 budget process to replace that unit a year ahead of when it was proposed. That unit was purchased used initially. At the time, the cost Councillor Hannah quoted was for a new machine. We ended up purchasing a 2-year-old used machine from the City of Ottawa to lower the cost at the time. And that's what this unit is. So it was well used when we got it. We've maintained it in a pretty good state up until the last little bit where it started to fall apart. So this is an information report to let you know that's what we're going to be doing. You're not approving a new machine at this time. And to be perfectly honest, there's only 2 companies in the game out there, and they're both about the same.
Follow-up, Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. And the other option I would make to the director or Mr. Brindley going forward, if I'm not sitting here when this comes forward next time around, if we could at least put the option again, as we've done in the past, for outsourcing the use of this equipment for cutting the grass and doing sidewalks, that we look at outsourcing at that time to see if it's a viable option.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. This machine is quite different from the new sidewalk cleaner that we got just last year, isn't it? It's got a lawnmower component, which I don't believe the newer one did.
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Allen. The most recent unit we purchased, we did not purchase the lawnmower attachment. However, the attachment that we have from the older machine does work on it and is on that machine. So the attachments that we have are interchangeable with that similar piece of equipment. So moving forward, we would have to evaluate the condition of the lawnmower unit that comes with it, because it is, I'm going to say it's probably 12, 14 years old now, and it's cut a lot of grass, so it's getting a little long in the tooth, but it would be part of our evaluation and budget proposal for 2019, whether or not, what attachments we would require in addition to what we have now.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Ritchie.
Yes, through the director. About how many hours is on this machine now, Director Belcourt?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Ritchie. I don't know that off the top of my head. I would have to research it and let you know.
So, we've spent $37,000 fixing this thing up, and to trade it in, it's only worth $10,000?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Ritchie. That is a number they quoted us in our initial discussions, very preliminary discussions, because we weren't intending to buy a new machine at that time.
So there's 27,000 there. I'm sorry, maybe the CO, would you like to comment?
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councilor Ritchie. I wasn't sure where you're going, but I'm just saying that at a $10,000 discount, we may keep this as a spare, as averse to trading it in. So that's something we do with an undervalued piece of equipment. If we're only offered 10, we may keep it around as a backup.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. 10-9, I believe it was. And now, do we want to pull this, or do you want to just comment on it, Councilor McConkey? Okay, well, actually,
I'd like to-
okay, why don't we
I
pull
would
it in
pull
case
it,
we have
yeah.
some lively discussion? Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Just for clarification, because we're just receiving these items as information, unless you have, unless you would like to change the recommendation, that's when we would pull the item. So if it's just discussion, questions, whatnot, the item is on the table right now for that purpose. So only pull the item if you're going to be changing the recommendation.
Is it comment, or is there
No,
consideration of
when
changing direction?
they say they want us to consider, there's one I'd like to pull from the consideration.
Okay, so why don't we pull it in case there is some discussion? So let's receive the remainder. And while we're doing this, and it's just a comment on 10.6, hopefully everyone that's watching or listening, because there's been a number of requests over the years, why don't we have transportation in Springwater of some description, and starting August 7th, there will be transportation provided by County Transit Services, Lynx, that will be traveling down St. Vincent. There'll be 2 stops in Midhurst, and then it'll proceed out to 27 North. There'll be a stop in Elmville, proceed to Waverly, Wybridge, Penetang, and Midland. So it will be the commencement of some mass transit in Springwater as we go forward. So that's my comment on that. Okay, so still moved by Allen, seconded by Coghlan, that reports items 10.2 through to 10.11 be received as information, with the exception of item 10.9 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so Councillor McConkey, 10.9.
One of the items that we're supposed to consider is the cost of living allowance, and it's COLA based on the 12-month Ontario CPI average from June 2017 to May 2018. I would like to say that I don't believe COLA should be used when we see that the province is just moved in and they're saying at the provincial level to put a freeze on wages for management and that the frontline workers would. So I would like to sort of leave the COLA, the decision on the increase for the next council. And I do not feel it should be put in at COLA for everyone.
CEO Brindley,
Mr. Mayor, through to Councilor McConkey, if the way it's worded here, the 2019 budget and business plan will be prepared to consider, and one of those items is the COLA. At the time, council will look at it, and council will determine at that time whether staff get COLA or not. It's just saying one of the things that we are going to consider, that council will consider as part of the budget process. We're not looking for council's approval on this. It's just as part of the budget process, and this is similar to every year. One thing council does look at is staff's cost of living allowance.
Councillor McConkey.
So could you come prepared to the budget time with a consideration of removing COLA from management and providing it just to the frontline workers?
CEO Brindley.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councilor McConkey, that will be a decision of council at that time.
Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, we have a separate resolution, moved by McConkey, seconded by someone, Coghlan. That the report item 10.9 be received as information. All those in favor, carried. Okay, moving on to verbal reports. Official plan update. Maybe we'll go CEO Brindley. Any updates on the official plan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is very soon we'll be releasing the growth management study. So that will be released to the public, and we'll be in a consultation period, which I understand will release it over the summer, and we'll be returning back to the public for comments in the early fall.
Any comments on economic development update? Thank you. Okay, county updates. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Allen first.
Thank you, Mayor French. For the June 26, 2018 County Council meeting, with respect to the Environmental Resource Recovery Center and the County Official Plan Amendment number 2 related to that, I tried to get the, we pulled that item at the meeting, and I spoke to it again at length and called for a recorded vote, but it was defeated in a recorded vote, 92 to 31. So clearly a motion to defer this amendment would not have gotten any traction, in my opinion. The Deputy Mayor for Bradford, West Gwillimbury, James Leduc, moving on to the 2% tax increase parameter, high-level parameter, and trying to get that reduced to 1.5% as we had tried to do in the strategic plan. That was defeated. And then I put forward the motion, which I discussed with county staff, to have the county hold a public information session to review the comments and concerns expressed by the public and regulatory agencies and see how they were going to be specifically addressed in the amended studies and moving forward with the additional work required for the site plan and the environmental compliance. There was discussion around whether the meeting should happen now with the information or whether it should wait until further down the road when more things are clear to staff, such as the technology and and further work as part of the site plan and environmental compliance approval. So when the vote was taken, again, a recorded vote, it was defeated by 73 to 50 to have that meeting happen at this particular point in time, but acknowledging that there will be future public information sessions with respect to this. Another thing that was discussed is a major development that is being considered for Simcoe Manor in Beaton. And we looked at the preliminary business case. That's a multi-million-dollar rebuilding and redevelopment of the affordable housing and the long-term care units down there in Beaton. That would be funded by 7 different funding opportunities for about 81% of the total capital cost, with other fundraising being required for the remaining 20%. So it's at the preliminary business case stage. It's interesting that the preliminary business case for that is happening right up front, which is something that we had to battle for with respect to the ERRC. I find that interesting. And then another topic of interest, because we talked about it at the township level, was the review of the 2019 to 2022 county councillor remuneration. And it's part of the previous council to consider the potential changes to remuneration. And so it wouldn't affect this council, but it would go into an effect for the next council. The changes in June 2017 to eliminate the 1/3 tax exemptions that we all experience in municipalities it also affects the county council. The base remuneration for county councillor has not been reviewed for 10 years. And staff did a calculation based on the estimated time for meetings, per diems, and other meetings, committees, and they estimated that on average, the present remuneration for county councillors is $8.13 per hour versus a minimum wage of $14 per hour. So based on studies and comparisons, staff recommended that the warden remuneration remain the same, but the deputy warden and the county councillor salaries be increased by $5,000 effective for the new council. And the proposed new base remuneration for county councillors equated to $8.16 per hour, and if you reflect the dual role of county councillors along with their average lower tier remuneration, that equated to a $19.18 per hour remuneration. So that's part of the recommendation. So it was two components. It was to increase the compensation to offset for the removal of the 1/3 tax benefit the way we reviewed at the municipal level. And it was to increase the remuneration by $5,000. It was voted by county councillors to do the former but not do the latter, and to leave that for further debate and further study before making the decision with respect to that.
Yes, Councillor Hanna.
A question of our deputy mayor, if I may. Did the allowance that county councillors get to attend meetings, was that taken into consideration when they were increasing the compensation that county councillors will receive?
Yes, that was the part that I referred to, which was the... Yes, that was the part that I was talking about, where the total base remuneration plus the per meeting remuneration came out to an average of $8.16 per hour from a county perspective. And then, so the 5,000 increase plus the average remuneration that a county councillor gets from their lower tier, from the municipality, would have taken that combined increase up to $19.18 per hour, but the 5,000 was not approved
Follow up.
at this time.
Thank you. I guess my understanding is the allowance to go to a county, for a county councillor to go to a meeting can be as much as $186 to attend that meeting. That meeting might be 10 minutes or an hour, so it seems to me that that should have been given more consideration from my view.
The only meetings that are 10 minutes is if there's not a quorum, and if there's not a quorum, then you don't get paid to attend that meeting. Meetings generally take from an hour and a half to 3 hours. So the remuneration is for the meeting that does actually occur and get fulfilled.
Yeah. I guess my only additional comment is that I was very supportive of what we did, making up for the third. I was not supportive of a $5,000 jump. I did throw out a suggestion that, okay, if for some reason we haven't evaluated, the remuneration, $8 an hour, it's always interesting the way the calculations come about, that we should consider stepping it in, same as the problem we have at the minimum wage in the province, we jump too fast, like 30%. So I don't think it would behoove us jumping $5,000. I think it should be inched in and bring it up to, whatever minimum wage. And I think somewhere down the road that might come back in a report, but we simply approved kind of making up for the 1/3, which I think is very, very appropriate because we do want to attract people that are interested in reading, 1,000-page kind of reports and agendas every 2 weeks. I think the real comment that I have on the county is, and we're pretty close at the beginning of the term, it needs a new governance model where we have directly elected warden, deputy warden, and county councilors. It's the only way that model is ever going to work, would be my comment in that. But yes, and of course, we don't have any meetings until August. I guess the other comment I would make is we did get a commitment from them verbally, because I asked the question, because the moment they passed their official plan amendment for the ERRC, theoretically, the next day, if they would have had council's authorization, they could have launched an OMB appeal for us not rendering a decision, lack of decision, which is interesting because we couldn't make the decision because it didn't meet with the official plan of the county until that moment. But we do have a commitment that it is not their intent to trigger that. Now, stay tuned for the meeting in August, and we'll see if they stick by that. Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French, and I guess to you. So because of the 180-day lapse, is that what triggered that? And we are satisfied with a verbal commitment? Or how do we get more than a verbal commitment from the county?
Well, the good news is, we know they can't do it until August, the meeting, or 14th, or wherever it is. And quite honestly, I guess we'll find out if they're being forthright or not at that point. They're definitely, at that point, I was thinking of tabling a motion, but motions don't seem to carry really well at the county, so I wasn't going to go down that road. But at least we have that verbal. And I'm hoping, and I'll bring it up, probably items for future consideration, because we know the open house got derailed at the county. There's nothing preventing us from having an open house at the township level to deal with, because we have to do an OPA and a zoning bylaw amendment, and there's no reason we can't take further input, because we have done that with other applications that have went through the kind of legal process. So we'll see where that one goes. But any other questions on the county? Okay. Municipal updates. What's happening? Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor French, just want to mention, you were there, the deputy mayor was there. This was the fireworks we had Canada Day in Phelpston. Great display. Lots of people came out. I mean, lots of people. The Kinsman's there to put it on. They do a great job. Great night had by all for Springwater. And lots of mosquitoes, and they're big too in Phelpston. They grow them big down there, trust me. They'll carry off into the swamp, but good night had by all.
Councillor Anna.
Springwater Swing Golf Tournament next Wednesday. Vesper Hills and staff have done an excellent job. So if things go as the way they're planned, it should be an outstanding event.
Yes, and if anybody out there that just found out about it, you might be able to squeeze one more foursome in, but that'd be about it. Any other comments or updates on what's happening around Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to Director Coleman. I just wanted to pass along the appreciation from the community of Anton Mills, the 2 roadworks that are happening. People are very excited about them, and the staff are being great. There's a bit of a traffic issue sometimes at the corner there, but everything is going really well, and they're really excited for the results, so thank you.
And I guess one thing I did forget, this Friday at 10 a.m. is the official opening of the Elmville Farmers Market. It has been open for a couple weeks now, but that's the official launch of the season, and they have lots of good vendors and lots of fresh kind of local produce and products, so I invite everyone to come up and enjoy a wonderful day in Elmville, and maybe take in one of the local restaurants and tour the streets and find some knickknacks. Any other comments? Okay, moving on to notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Items for future consideration, and I guess I'll just throw it on the table. And maybe can ask planning that to work on a possible open house before our OPAs and ZBAs, at an appropriate time, whatever our timetable is. Be nice to be before the county does something to us, or that probably not good terminology, but anyway, it would be nice to be able to get feedback and questions answered to the best of our ability through our planning kind of mechanics rather than the counties. Any other items for future consideration? Okay, seeing none. Bylaws. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Allen and Coghlan? That the bylaw listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And the confirmation bylaw, can I have a mover and a seconder? Coghlan and Ritchie. That bylaw 2018-050 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council of the regular meeting held on July 4th, 2018, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And our adjournment bylaw, a mover and a seconder? Ritchie. Ritchie and somebody else? Coghlan. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned 8:21 p.m. to meet again the regular meeting on August 1st, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the Council Chambers Administrative Center, Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. And I know that we are going to have a special council meeting for planning later this month. I think it's the 23rd, is it? Good. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all the questions and input. That's what makes it such an effective council.